Hello everyone. Now we'll be doing the chapter, The Bet. Sometimes we make foolish decisions in our life that we cannot undo later on. Let's say suppose you make a bet with your friend that if he gets above 90 in maths, then you will shave off your head. And surprisingly, he gets 90 above in maths exam. What do you do now? Do you shave off your head just because he got 90 above? Well, that was a foolish decision. And this chapter is based on one such foolish bet. So let's just first have an overview of the chapter. The story starts with the old banker remembering a party he had thrown 15 years ago. The party guests included many intellectuals and clever men who engaged in various interesting conversation, eventually landing on the controversial topic of capital punishment. Most of the guests disapproved of the death penalty and thought it was immoral and that it should be replaced by imprisonment for life. The banker objected to this idea, arguing that the death penalty is more humane and moral because it grants the man a quick death as opposed to imprisonment for life, which kills him slowly. Other guests suggested that both methods are equally immoral because they both attempt to take a life, and that is something that the state has no right to, as it is not God. Among the party guests was also a young lawyer who, when asked a question about his opinion, answered that he sees both punishments equally immoral. But if he had to choose, he would certainly pick the imprisonment for life, as having in confinement is better than not living at all. So we see that he is thinking about a party. And whenever you will see a group of intellectuals gathered together, usually they would be discussing on some topic, and in this case it was capital punishment. So everybody has their own views. Even in such cases, people who do not generally have a view of their own, they form some view. So some were favoring capital punishment, some were not. Some were saying that, like the banker was saying that death penalty is more humane because it kills you in one go and does not let you suffer for long. Whereas some, like the young lawyer who was also present at the party, said that life imprisonment is what he would choose if he had to choose something, because at least he would be living. This idea spurred a lively discussion, and the banker, who was much younger back then, was suddenly carried away with excitement. He declared it is not true and bet the lawyer 2 millions he won't be able to stay in solitary confinement for a period of 5 years. The young lawyer accepted the bet and added that he will not stay 5 years but 15 years. Later in the evening, it was decided that the lawyer would spend the time of the imprisonment in the lodge in the baker's garden. They agreed that for 15 years this man would not be allowed to leave the lodge, to see or hear people, or to receive letters and periodicals. What he was allowed to do was to read books, write letters, to drink and to smoke. In the lodge there was a little window through which he was to conduct any sort of relations with the outside world. During his confinement, he firstly started to suffer of depression or loneliness. However, with time he started studying vigorously, and we can see him developing constantly throughout the story. Now this was the foolish bet, as I called it earlier, that they made. So the banker was new into money, and he had all this money with him right now, and he was young and vibrant, and he was very egoist. He was very sure that he would make more money, and he thought 2 million was just a meager amount for him to give away as in a bet. And the lawyer, willing to take any money and willing to prove his point, as lawyers usually want to, he said, okay, I'll take the bet. And he said instead of 5 years, he would stay in isolation for 15 years, which is a lot of time. So as it happens, they decide the terms of the bet that the lawyer would not be able to see or hear people, nor meet anybody, nor receive any letters, or keep any kind of such contact from the outside world. Rather, he would be able to smoke and drink and do such luxurious things such as reading. But think for a while. He was allowed to smoke and drink and everything else, and play music and hear music and everything else, but how would he enjoy this all alone? These are things that one enjoys in company. So what happens is, in the first year, at first he gets very lonely. He's just suddenly been cut off from the outside world. So, of course, at first he goes into depression. Then slowly he starts studying various books. Let's read further. In the course of 4 years, the lawyer manages to read 600 volumes regarding various topics from classic literature through science to philosophy. In the final years of imprisonment, he studied chemistry and medicine, but also spent time reading Byron and Shakespeare. In the meantime, the banker gambled most of his fortune and could not decide which were bigger, his debts or his assets. He realized that only one thing that can save him from having to pay the 2 millions was the death of the lawyer. One day before the period of the confinement concluded, the banker decided to kill the prisoner. He found him in his cell asleep and noticed a note on the table. In the note, lawyer declared that during the imprisonment, he came to hate all material and therefore renounced this reward. The banker was overjoyed. He kissed the lawyer on the forehead and left happy that he did not have to kill anyone. The next day, the warden reported that the prisoner left the lodge through the window and disappeared. So this was the end of the story. And as I told you one slide ago, that in his youth, the banker was very vibrant and very excited about everything, and he did not think before acting. He just made the bet. At that time, he had come into wealth and 2 million was nothing for him. But after 15 years, we see that he has gambled and lost most of his fortunes. So time can change the tide, it can change everything. And that's what happened with the banker. And he did not thus want to give 2 million to the lawyer, because else he would have gone bankrupt. So what happens here is, the banker is now thinking to kill the lawyer. But the lawyer has been living in isolation for so long that he finds that more compelling than being with any company. He finds that more sacred and holy, and he finds happiness in that isolation. He has become a wise man by reading all these books, and his books have taken him everywhere. They have put him in all kind of scenarios, in romantic scenarios, in action scenarios, and he has seen the world through the books. The books have been his eyes, and that's why he does not now need the company of any man. And that's why he himself runs away from the lodge sometime before the 15 years were about to get over, and the banker does not have to kill him. Now let's understand the various themes of the story. First theme is knowledge. So as we saw that the lawyer read a lot of books, as they say that in 4 years only he read 600 volumes. So that means he gained a lot of knowledge, and he saw a lot of scenarios and from a lot of different perspectives. So that gave him knowledge that even isolation can be beautiful. Next, it is about life, consciousness and existence. In isolation, one thinks about death, one thinks about life, and what is the meaning of life and what is the destiny that they have been born for. Next, we have sacrifice. So sacrifice here basically is related to capital punishment. When we have to choose one thing, right? We either choose sudden death or life imprisonment. When we choose life imprisonment, we choose a little sacrifice as well. We sacrifice our family, but we live. Isolation. Isolation again, it helps you introspect into everything around you, and it makes you more compelling inside. Next, we have the character sketches, first for the lawyer. So the lawyer was a courageous man, as we saw, because he took up the bet without any hesitations. He said, okay, if you're saying 5 years, I'll take 15. So that makes him a very courageous man, but a foolish one at first. He was also very determined to complete the bet, as we see that he just leaves the lodge on his own just some time before the 15 years ended. It took determination for him to stay for 15 whole years there. Next, he initially acted without thinking. He did not at first understand what repercussions being isolated would have. He just took on the bet for the money. He became wise as the story continues and 15 years come to an end. After reading so many books and playing instruments and thinking about life, he becomes very wise and mature. he has a never give up attitude. As we already discussed, he is determined. In the same manner, he has a never give up attitude and he fulfills the bet that he has taken up. He is also a hermit. He is just like a caveman. He does not need company. He is complete by himself. Next, let's see the character sketch of the banker. So the banker, he does not keep his word. He had given a word that if he completes 15 years, then he would pay $2 million. But he was trying to kill the lawyer. That means he did not intend to keep his word. Next, he is glib. He somehow made the scenario such that the lawyer, he told the lawyer about the bet and made the scenario such that the lawyer accepted the bet. So he was glib. He even acts without thinking. He did not think that time would change the tide and something might happen with his money. He was too overconfident with it and he acted without thinking and put on the bet. He was very wealthy because he so easily put on the 2 million for the bet. So that's how we know he was very wealthy at first. Again, he was overconfident. He did not think twice. He just foolishly jumped into the puddle. So next, he was an egoist because he did not want to fail the bet, one. Secondly, he wanted to show to everybody that the point he was making at the party was correct and people should choose instant death instead of life imprisonment. So he wanted to prove his point and for that he would go to any extent. So he was an egoist. Now let's see a question from the previous 10 years. So this is the question. With close reference to the story The Bet by Anton Chekhov, mention the clauses of the bet as laid down between the young lawyer and the old banker. Give an account of the events that follow the bet. So there are two parts to the question. The first part discusses the clauses of the bet. So as we read that the lawyer was not allowed to interact with the outside world. He could not hear anybody. He could not speak to anybody. He could not exchange letters or postcards. In fact, the only things that he was allowed was playing instruments, reading books, drinking wine, smoking and such things. Even he just had a small little window in his lodge from where he could interact with the outside world, and that was the only source. So that was the first part. Second part, give an account of the events that follow the bet. Now in this scenario, many of you might just say about the lawyer, right, who was in the lodge. You might say that in the first year he went into depression and then subsequently he started reading. In between he went to musical instruments and he used to play them, and then again he started drinking and smoking and enjoying life, enjoying his isolation, and then again he started reading a plethora of books. But you have to understand that you do not only have to mention about the lawyer. You will also have to put the banker's point of view here, and you will have to tell that the banker was busy gambling and losing his money in these 15 years, and by the end of these he did not know how much debt or assets he had because he had so little money left. So you will have to give both the perspectives here.